My name's Dave Holden. I'm a film composer in Los Angeles. I write music for film and TV and a little bit of video games. We're in my studio where I write all my music in Burbank, California, right next to Warner Brothers. I've been a musician my whole life. I started as a saxophone player. I ended up going to the Berklee College of Music in Boston. Came out here in 2005. My first job, I think it was a listing on Craigslist for an assistant. I worked at Remote Control for quite a while. That's Hans Zimmer's studio. Probably the coolest project I worked on was The Dark Knight. I work with a lot of independent filmmakers, so it's not a huge studio with a lot of non-creative producers in control where they're really worried about, there's millions of dollars at stake there, so they can't really take a lot of chances. Whereas with independent film, it's a little more on the art side and you can take more risks. So I try to take advantage of that with all of my films, and I try to write very different sounding scores. When someone goes in to watch a film, they're not necessarily supposed to be picking out the music, and just like they're not supposed to be picking apart the amazing cinematography or even amazing acting, you're just supposed to get drawn in. So every note you write, everything that you come up with has to serve the movie. So on one computer I run Cubase, and then on another computer I run a very common program called Pro Tools. So when I start writing the music, I look at a screen like this. So I've got all the instruments on this side, but I'm looking at a blank screen. When I'm finished, I end up with this. Each one of these little things here is an instrument. So these are like strings, so when I click on that, it's gonna sound like strings. Here's brass, like here's our Freelancers theme. Big drums. And the reason these sound pretty good is these are samples. They've actually recorded a string section playing a C, playing a C sharp, playing a D. Ideally, you write all this music and then you create sheet music from it, and you go and you record the orchestra. But that can cost thousands and thousands of dollars, which we don't have. When I started writing the music for Freelancers, the very first thing I thought about was the music has to fit in the period, which is medieval or whatever you want to call it. Luckily, I was an assistant on a really great show called The Tudors. That was shot in a similar way, where it historically was somewhat accurate, but they also had a lot of modern twists on it. It was somewhat edgy. So when I started, I made sure to load a couple period pieces. These are like ouds and recorders and hurdy-gurdies, harp, and just a couple things that when you hear it, maybe you're reminded of medieval times. But I also wanted us to have somewhat of our different twists, so there's a lot of electric guitars. And then I also did a lot of modern things where I would take like a medieval instrument and run it through like a guitar amp and that sort of thing. To get that big sound, you have to layer and you have to decide like where you want to put stuff. So on Ivan, he's somewhat of a funny character. He's like the comic relief. So I used a tuba on a lot of his stuff because it somewhat has that comical feel. But the next cut, it cuts to Caitlin, and it's probably my favorite shot in the episode because she just looks so badass. So what I did is I had the music really come down so that when it goes back to Caitlin, it sounds really big and you hear the theme. And then here, I thought it would be really funny just to drop the music out completely. Just have Ivan, again, just going crazy because he's high on drugs. I wanted to have another musical theme that was like their heroic theme, where it's not quite so dark and dramatic. You get a sense that like this is like a drama action show, but it's also got a lot of comedy in it. So yeah, that's how I wrote the music for the show. Is that good? You be able to cut that into like a 15-second thing?